Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 7, Episode 11. It's called Brand New Day. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. And they are sly bastards, because, first of all, Brand New Day, if you're familiar with comic books, you're familiar with Spider-Man especially, that story's about, the rewriting of a timeline. This episode brings up the just directly into the conversation without even doing anything or changing anything, really. That, hey, maybe we're already in a new timeline. And they even start the episode with a character using the number 616 casually in a conversation, which I thought was really sort of just like, hey, wink, wink. We're talking about universes, we're talking about timelines, all
Nice
that stuff.
little referencing. The actual timeline bit, I think, was a more important beat rather than just a little bit of referencing. And it's kind of what we were talking about when it happened, that this is already changed, right?
Oh, I
Uh
never meant to imply that it was just a little
no.
thing.
But the name and the 616 are just little references and
Yeah,
stuff.
those are just little
Yeah.
tie-ins
But
to it, but
the actual core beat is kind of, it uses the idea of Mac's parents. Like, look, you already know this has changed. That was proof, um, and it's true. Yeah, we were kind of saying at the time. It's just nice to see them acknowledge that now.
yeah, and Sky's mom. So I mean, at this point,
Sure, yeah.
we're way over the line. Also worth mentioning, this is our second last week of Shield because both episodes are airing next week. We're getting a double, so
I mean, that sucks. I mean, but on the same time, a double, that's fun. I'm kind of glad Doom Patrol finished this week in that sense, because I have to squeeze them all in at once.
I wouldn't have cared. I'd have been too excited about final episodes of Shield. It's they've done it multiple seasons before. They didn't do it last year, which is why I think we didn't expect it this year. But they have done it. This is like the fourth or fifth season they've done this with.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we got a double finale next week. So this was essentially not a penultimate episode per se, but it kind of feels like it in the sense that next week's going to have them represented as a pair. So this was a sort of the emotional, slower beats before the big
Mhm.
finale. There was a lot of stuff. Obviously, very quickly, Sky's on the warpath, wants to get info from her sister. That meeting is immediately hostile. Sky quakes her up against the wall. It does kind of a tease with us where it makes us think that, wait, is Sybil's plan going to be right? Is Sky going to help, her quote unquote sister? But of course, it plays the more emotional beat that works for us, where she says, "No, I'm going to help my sister. Her name's Gemma Simmons. I'm going to go and get her off that goddamn ship." And Sousa insists on coming with her. Mac pops in at the last second, and this is all under the guise that the computer, Sybil is predicting everything. There was a scene earlier on where Cora actually guesses what Daisy's about to say because there's all these algorithms that have predicted what's going to happen. So they're going off book. They're doing things at random that they wouldn't normally do.
Honestly, while I agree with the logic, the only bit of this that feels truly unpredictable is Susan coming along, because that Daisy going off on her own isn't exactly unpredictable, is it? She's never
True,
done that before.
true. But she's got backup at least this time, which is maybe a little less on the nose.
Sure.
But yeah, there was a lot of stuff. So they take the the plane up into space, and they're sort of on their way to the ship, but they don't actually make it by the end of the episode. They're just getting close by the end of the episode. There's a lot of stuff on the ship with those three characters in various pairs, or all three of them having conversations. Highlights have to include the Sky bringing up that, hey, this is supposed to be our last mission. Enoch said that this was the end, and Mac's like, maybe that's for the best. Maybe it's time to like hang up the old work clothes and be
Mm.
normal people. And Sky's terrified by this prospect. So that was kind of a heart to heart that I thought was interesting. Uh,
All of these conversations were great, I thought.
yeah, her reaction to that, and then him saying, "No, you don't need us to know who you are, and we're still going to be family." It doesn't change any of that. Like just because we move on and do other things. And then likewise, the Sousa. It's during this scene where Matt kind of brings up, or Sky at one point looks around at Sousa, a sort of an emotional beat, and Matt kind of starts laughing. Oh, you made it so obvious. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "Oh, you're so." And Sousa's like, and she's like, we kind of kissed you at the time loop. It's like, okay, first of all, that's wrong because he doesn't remember that. Secondly, and then she's like, "Why are you smelling so much?" Like, because you owes me $20.
And
all
then we
delightful.
get him giving the dad talk.
Yeah, I love this because even though he's older, right, he's never necessarily been a father. He's always like a big brother to Fitz, right? Because that with his introduction back in season 2, he was kind of looking after Fitz, and Fitz was kind of helpless at the time. But this was straight up the dad's talk, and it felt kind of fatherly the way he was doing it. He's like, but I even like the subversion to it, where he's like, "What are your intentions?" And he's like, "What are you talking about? I don't have any intentions."
I
Like,
don't have any
you better get some quick.
Yeah. This was a great conversation. Very funny.
Yeah, them giggling over the name Quake, which was amusing enough on its own. I mean, it wasn't like hilarious, but later on when Sousa starts calling her Quake and she's like, "Why are you doing that?" And you just it wasn't, and even that on its own wasn't that funny. It was when it cut to Mac in the cockpit just kind of giggling as he was overhearing this conversation.
I don't know. Susan going, "Do you not want a Q on your waistband so people know?"
All just delightful stuff. It was one of those things where I could tell all episode because of how sort of light and like heartfelt and funny a lot of this stuff was, that the ending was probably going to be quite dark, and it was probably going to have this big cliffhanger get into the, and it was also to maybe make us feel less shit because the Simmons stuff was getting really depressing at a certain point.
Yeah. But honestly, the just that scene at the end there between Sousa and Daisy was so good. It had, it was like, oh, I know, this showed off their chemistry, and this connection in about what 45, 60 seconds, more than more than anything with Lincoln ever did, for example.
Sure. I mean, it's kind of been there, for a lot of the season, but yeah, this was kind of a showcase of just, no, this is, like, now that we're actually addressing it, we're bringing it up, we're having them talk about it. No, it's not just, because so many shows will start talking about two characters that are meant for each other or something, and it comes off as so fake and vapid because it's just because the plot wants them to be a couple. This immediately said, no, this isn't just talk. Like, there's chemistry. There's clearly something here between them that works on screen. And what voodoo magic that is, whether it just be chemistry between actors, chemistry between good acting, which I think is a slightly different thing, or just on the page, it's just writing. I mean, a combination of all those things. I mean, whatever it may be that creates that, it's there. So
yeah, it's hard to know, without having a control group essentially, and separating the elements. But whichever one it is, if it's all of them, it comes across, and that's what matters at the end.
I will say my least favorite thing about this episode is actually how obvious it was that they were avoiding showing Jia Ying's body because they didn't have the actress. And there's more elegant ways of dealing with the fact that you don't have the body to show.
It is, and I thought it was a little frustrating in the sense that it would be so easy to plan ahead, just film an extra 30 seconds of her lying on a table while you've got her for the day. It's not that much more. I mean, you don't.
No, actually, no, that doesn't work. That's not why. Like, they of course they can do that. There's a reason why they don't. Is that they have to pay for another episode. They don't just get a billet to.
No, I know, but just just do it while it's there. Is the concern?
That's not the concern. No, it's a budget thing.
I get that, but I'm saying they should have just done it while it was there and made that call and gone with the budget and just gone, it's worth it, because otherwise you have this awkward moment.
Well, I mean, you don't need to have this awkward moment, though. You can film it in different ways. You like the scene itself. They have her go in. May lifts up the thing because Cora's all blah blah, and at one point she says, and one day my mother will see me for what I am," and May's like, "Oh, your mother's here. I'm going to show her." And it's like, "Oh, that's a big reveal," but maybe she'll actually see how evil Nathaniel is. And the way it's shot, they go in the room. May lifts the thing, and it's kind of over the shoulder. But the moment that really pissed me off in terms of I'm noticing how much you're hiding this, is when it cuts to another shot looking down at her, but it's just as Cora's arms over the face. So I felt body double the entire time, and it was really distracting. So like, all you do, there's multiple ways you could do it, but I'll suggest one is you just have them go to the door, have Cora realize that she's been shown a body in a table, and you could just either cut away there, or or even just start the scene with her walking away from the table with the corpse on it.
While that sounds ideal, they really wanted that beat of her, trying to, give her the energy, right?
I guess.
That desperation.
I guess. But it was distracting. It's one of these things where I just like once I'm aware that it's really obvious they're hiding something, not because it's dramatically got an effect, but because they just can't show a thing because they don't have it.
Yeah.
It really sticks out in my mind, and I can't not pay attention to it. And I know everyone was thinking I was being too mean to poor Mr. Young Paxton. I mean, he's only got a couple of lines in this episode, so I didn't really think about it that much. It was fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't really. We said it all last week anyway.
Yeah,
So
he popped out, he said a line, he teleported back. There was not much to him this episode. But the other stuff in the base though, Coulson's cracking the computer code, because he's an android and
yeah, I mean, we whatever their plan was. Cora shuts down all the power for the lighthouse, which
Mhm.
turns on the firewalls, and Sybil, being there in code, basically is able to get in and do
Yeah,
whatever she.
which we see from the end of the episode is basically to locate every other shield base on the planet, for the purpose of the ending, which is the ship up in orbit, basically just blowing up every shield location. And we see the Triescalon from Winter Soldier be blown up, and
Let's try Skellion, but okay.
that probably is. I couldn't remember it. I was
Yeah,
ballparking it.
I think do you know what I wouldn't have done if they hadn't mentioned it like 2 or 3 episodes ago? That it was ahead of schedule.
Sure. But that felt looked quite good, to be honest. Because it, you know,
It did.
because I was looking at it thinking, did they reuse some assets from, and maybe the model of the building and CG was taken from the movie, but honestly, the explosion looked new. It wasn't like a shot from the movie.
It can't have been, no.
So it was a solid moment, and it was good to use the recognizable one, because obviously they show like 50 locations on the world map, but no, it's the one that we recognize. It's the one we know from a movie that has some weight.
It's smart. It's probably the only one they could have used that would have had any notable impact.
Yeah, nothing else would have had the impact. But yeah, so Cora still seems to be on Team Nathaniel by the end. But I mean, there's maybe that doubt.
Maybe seeds of doubt
Yeah.
in that final scene, because there's a great moment where Coulson basically tells May, it's like, no, you have to be the one to go give the speeches and convince people now.
Yeah, you've got that new power that you can use, and I think it's interesting again bringing up stuff from early days. The cavalry stuff is brought up. Cora
Yeah.
tries to kind of like, hey, you're a child killer, May, like and she tries to say you did the wrong thing. And I think it's interesting that May is at a point now where not only has she made peace with this, she's able to argue in a scene with someone who's accusing of her of doing something bad. She's like, no, I made the right choice, and I will happily defend why I
this
made the right
was
choice.
Such a huge defining thing for season 3, I think it was, for May. Obviously, it had been around before that, but that was where we
Yeah.
really kind of dove into it. And obviously, that was quite a while ago now. But the fact that, like I say, she has matured to a place where maybe she doesn't like the choices, but she's comfortable in accepting what the past is in the past, which
Oh, yeah.
technically isn't really true right now. But you get the point.
And even bringing up Andrew, bringing up Rosalind, remember Coulson's love interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know who she is. The name's kind of vague in my head, but like bringing up all these past things. Yeah, we've not thought about any of this in a long time because they've been gone for so long. They're really making a point of like referencing every part of the timeline of the show and being like, here's everything.
It's a sort of small beats where if you don't remember exactly who these people are, it doesn't really matter. That it still works. But they are intentionally choosing I don't want to say deep cuts because they're not obscure, but older things.
Yeah. So no, that was basically the stuff on the base. Yo-Yo is obviously there as well, helping things out. Because Cora at one point just blasts one of the other Inhumans who, was fighting against Yo-Yo and that, and basically says, oh, okay, if these are a danger, I'll just kill one then. This is all about making the world a better place. Killing, because she's offering to kill people. And she's like, hey, name someone who you think the world would be better off with, killing. And she's like, what about Grant Ward, eh? Maybe I could kill him.
And I'm like, oh, this is, teasing things now. I'm like, oh, I mean, I'm not sure we're going to actually get to play with Ward now because it's only,
yeah,
next
just
week.
the last 2 episodes, but
if there's any sort of wrap-up moments, I wouldn't be surprised.
Joe, I could almost see happening. Let's say there is kind of a new timeline, like sort of more solidified at the end or whatever. Not necessarily they'll all be together, but I could almost see like a montage at the end that's kind of reminiscent of at the end of Days of Future Past, where maybe we'll get a couple of cameos there where we see that, oh no, Ward's a good guy and he's.
I kind of agree with that. That's what I was thinking, because they mention Ward, and and costs. I think it's Costas. I don't know. We've seen a world where he can be good.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, we're establishing we're in a new timeline. It was only really the manipulation that led Ward to be who he was. Um, so maybe we can, you know, avert that at least that particular crisis.
Yeah, maybe we see Andrew. Maybe we see these other characters that have been mentioned.
What is this timeline at the end? Are there Avengers in this timeline at the end? Who knows how different things are going to be?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but we're interested to see what they do, and what all these characters who are now kind of remnants of a forgotten timeline, or they'll reinstate the timeline that as it's supposed to be, and that'll be equally wonky in whatever they do with it. But
It's possible. Yeah, I think a little tougher in a storytelling sense right now, but it's possible.
well, we'll see. But of course the other stuff was Simmons. Obviously Deke. Joe's funny actually because Deke didn't get his Die Hard thing, but I remember last week sort of saying, "Oh, is Deke going to be doing Die Hard stuff?"
Yeah,
and
we were both straight to it. It's like this is what it felt like it was setting up immediately.
And I thought it was still a bit of a stretch, though. I thought we were kind of jumping to something just because, there's a couple of reasons why we think that. But the first line out of his mouth, the first thing he says is, "It's just like Nakatomi Plaza," and I'm like, "God damn, Deke!"
Of course, he gets captured immediately because Deke. But it's just nice that we weren't reaching. We were getting that vibe intentionally, and they played with that joke and against our expectations for it.
Yeah. The writers knew what we were thinking, and that's sign of some skill. So
Yeah.
But yeah, so Nathaniel's trying to look into Simmons' head, and we get kind of like some brief flashbacks of like previous episodes, clips with stuff, and he's getting frustrated because that's not what he wants. He wants the juicy stuff. He wants to get to where Fitz is now. And it actually took me a second to realize we were in a new scene at first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I was like, oh, that seems like the sort of thing that might have been happening in like, I don't know, somewhere in like a flashback in season 5 or something when they were
Sure.
setting up, they were trying to build a device. Because remember, there was a whole thing where they were on the lighthouse and they were trying to build a device, and I thought it was maybe in that part of the chunk, and I was like, and it occurred to me kind of like halfway through, I'm like, wait a minute, this is new. this is a new scene. What's happening?
Which I guess to their credit means they did a good job of it feeling like it was genuinely occurring in that time period.
Obviously, the later one in the the White Room was much more obvious that this was completely new. But
that was intentional.
Obviously, it got obvious, but as the scene went on as well, because once they start talking about like what they're going to do, about blood work, which we'll do, and then about whatever else they're doing, and they have all the time in the world because they're building a time machine. It doesn't matter when they finish it, because when they finish it, they can just go back to whenever they need to go back to. Of course, the fact that Simmons doesn't look much older than she is, or was, when she left, you don't imagine it's been that long, maybe a few years, but nothing extreme. So, but no, like, whose blood work are we talking about? Is it his? Is it hers? Is it a child? Is she pregnant?
The gut assumption, and I think what they want us to think, at least at this point, is it's Fitz's, and there's something wrong with him, and that's partially why she's not remembering where he is, or what exactly has happened to him.
Well, that's the thing. I was thinking that as an obvious possibility during that conversation.
It feels a little bit too obvious.
Well, that's not what I was going to say, although that's also perhaps true. But more that the later conversation when he's convincing her that to use, because they say that we didn't build this inhibitor, this device wasn't for this, and he says to her that no, you have to use it and you have to do this. The way they're talking about, like, she says, I can't do this. It doesn't sound, because I think the implication before, when we heard her screaming, we've heard the little teases about not just what she can't remember for strategic reasons, but what she doesn't want to remember for pain reasons.
Yeah.
I think our implication was always that something bad already happened, but Fitz is obviously fine and well in the scene that he's talking to her, and it's actually a really well shot scene. I love how he kind of just fades away because our memory, he's gone now.
I would say he is visibly fine and well, but that doesn't actually mean he is.
No, I'm not saying he's not. I'm not saying he's not sick. He could be sick and dying. I'm not saying that's definitely not the case. I'm saying that the implication, the way she screams "no," when she screamed a couple episodes ago, it felt like whatever happened had happened already. It felt like some big climactic thing with Fitz had already went down, and the way he was even talking in the scene kind of made it feel like whatever's happened has happened. and he's still there.
Possibly, yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not sure I entirely agree with this.
It was just the vibe I was getting from the way they were talking. It felt a little bit skewed differently. I mean, my if they're going to have a happier ending here, where there's something ultimately good coming out of all this, my guess is blood work is that she's pregnant, and that's what the blood work was, and that
It's very
you know,
possible, yeah.
and they'll have like Fitz with a baby or something, and like
Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying you're wrong on any of this. Just it wasn't necessarily some of my first thoughts. But I mean, you could be right.
oh, so you think we're getting a depressing ending for these two? Is that what you're thinking?
Would it be out of character for these two for the trend this show has had?
I think, given how much turmoil the writers have put us through when it comes to Fitzsimmons over the course of the 7 seasons, they owe us the happy end. They owe us the happy ending.
Us nothing.
And don't get me wrong, like, I appreciate that they're going to make it painfully ambiguous until the last possible. Like, we're not going to get that happy ending until the last 5 minutes of the last episode. But up until then, it's going to be pain and misery of wondering what the outcome is.
I can see a handful. I can see Daisy dying. Honestly.
That's separate from what I was. We were just talking about Simmons, but sure.
Pain and misery in the last episodes. And happy endings. I can see that being the case. The way they're playing it with Sousa being particularly sweet, and then that would be the reason why it's the last mission together as a team. It's not that the team actually disbands after, but more they're not all still there. So that would play.
I would debate that even if 2 or 3 of them die and the rest still work together, that's still the team. There's just less of them, but it's still the team.
I'd have to listen to the actual wording again. In my head, the wording was, "This is the last mission you will all have together, not the team will have together." But I mean, I would have to double check.
I don't remember either. I'm going based on what you just said.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I was kind of paraphrasing in the quote and then realizing, as you point out, that the actual quote is relevant and specific.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not super interested in predicting too much stuff. I don't necessarily want to do will X character die? Will this character die? Will that character? I don't really have too much fun in that side of thinking. It's just with Fitz and Simmons especially, there's been so much throughout the show of teasing misery and then giving us the happy release, then teasing more misery and giving us the happy release. I feel like they owe us the happy ending, and I suspect
that's kind of why there would be something to the misery, right? They've been teasing the misery, and they always kind of it's okay at the end. If this one time, the final time, it's not, that lands.
I think not having Fitz for almost all of the final season would make that really cold.
Yeah,
because we've not had Fitz all season, I think they're more inclined to want to give us something somewhat happy at the end. That would be my. Admittedly, I'm thinking about it on a meta level as opposed to an actual in story level, but that would be my guess.
Yeah.
No, that's not to say that I don't expect that there won't be casualties, because I could see at least 1 or 2 going, but
yeah, I mean, this show has never been afraid to kill off characters. And now, when you're at the end, I mean, it's even more free reign than usual, right?
Coulson probably goes again, but that's not exactly. I'm not getting points for that.
It's hardly a big deal at this point.
May seems like a fairly logical choice, but maybe that's why it won't be her, because she's just sort of predictable and that she's the older one. She's.
There'd be something to her having the survivor's guilt, almost, right?
Yeah, but I mean, we have no idea what the final beats of this show are going to be. If they end up altering themselves out of reality and they all have this sweet moment together before they kind of get wiped, and we see this new reality sort of take over, that completely almost just invalidates every prediction we would make, because all of a sudden they're all alive, they're all happy, even characters who were dead before are alive and they're all happy.
Yeah, but they just probably don't know each other, maybe, in that timeline.
No, but it would be a very bittersweet thing, but it'd be happy, but they'd all have their happy. Mac may have his daughter back, for example.
Right.
But maybe he doesn't meet Yo-Yo, or maybe in this world he does meet Yo-Yo anyway, and there's something, the perfect happy world. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I still think there's a chance we see Ward, maybe in the context of a little thing at the end, but not. I don't expect him to play a major
It's not in
role.
the earlier in the season when we were hopping through time constantly, and we thought, oh, but are we
Yeah,
going to get to the 90s and the 2000s and see younger Ward stuff? I don't think we're getting that anymore, obviously.
yeah, we're
But
still
I
in the
agree with
'80s
you.
as far as I know.
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think we've moved past the '80s yet. So,
I think we're in the later 80s now. But yeah, I think we're still 80s.
but I mean, maybe they'll play with that. Maybe they will jump again. When they attack the other ship, maybe something will happen that'll.
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible. I know nothing is set in stone here, but I think, like you say, the wrap up kind of epilogue sequencing stuff. Maybe there's a good chance of seeing some brief Ward stuff in that.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Like I said, I thought the scene with Simmons and Fitz where he disappears because she's forgotten him, and then of course the big thing we need to mention afterwards is that when she wakes up off the table to see how Deke is, he mentions Fitz and she says, "Who's Fitz?" So again, they're playing with the pain and misery. This is the
Yeah,
knife before the happiness at the
and
end.
it seems to be something with how the implant works. And at first, when she said a line to, it was you keep digging for Fitz and he'll disappear forever.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, it felt just like like a threat of like, you won't get anything from me. If you go too far, you'll kill me, and then you will never find out. Sort of that sort of threat. But come this point at the end, I'm like, okay, is there like a defense mechanism built into this chip where if she starts to remember certain things, it will essentially delete more memories?
Yeah. I'll tell you right now, there's going to be an emotional scene of her remembering who Fitz is by the end of the last episode.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh, which it's actually kind of reminiscent a little bit of the last couple of episodes of Chuck in some ways, which I actually am a big defender of. Some people hate the last couple of episodes of Chuck. I think it was beautifully poignant. For a
No,
show that never really went in that direction, it was kind of oddly like there was real stakes in a show that never really had stakes before because it was so lighthearted.
I think there's a lot of shows that kind of do that. Not necessarily it stakes in the same way that show, but in terms of they'll be lighthearted, kind of nothing shows, but then in their last couple episodes, they'll really try
Mm.
and pull at some emotions.
I,
This is
I,
a goodbye.
and this show has always had stakes. This is not a
Yeah.
new thing for the show, but I do see them playing that beat, and it's probably going to be heartbreaking and hopefully happy heartbreaking because it'll be with Fitz there, and because this show for Prime Pain, Fitz is going to show up soon, right? Next episode, even if not, obviously, if it's not the next one, it'll be the last one.
Yeah, I think there'd be some if Fitz is alive and out there, there'll be something to him showing up and her not remembering him, not recognizing him.
Mm. So yeah, we'll see. At this point, though, we're just sitting predicting things aimlessly without really much direction. So I don't think there's much more to really say here, except that obviously we're excited for the next episode, next two episodes, and it should hopefully be an exciting, emotional finale. And I think that's probably the big thing that I'd get across is that spending 7 seasons with a show and getting attached to the characters when the writing is good, like the show has been in this, or the writing has been in this rather, for so long. It's a feeling that's kind of unparalleled in any other forms of entertainment. So it's a special occasion, and it's hard to predict when the next time I'm going to feel this is. So I'm going to cherish it. I'm going to make a day of it next week, and I'm going to really feel it. So I hope many of you do the same. So let us know what you thought of this penultimate episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Like is really important on YouTube. It's the easiest and free way to support us. You can also go to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us for a little bit of money, for as little as $1, in fact, and get some bonuses for your troubles. Otherwise, get us on Twitter as @mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?